Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down the Tee Tennis Podcast. We're back today to preview and make our predictions for the 2022 French Open women's singles draw. We previewed the men's draw. If you haven't already checked that out and you're interested, have a look. It'll be on the YouTube channel and on podcast platforms. So yeah, today the women's singles draw, we're going to be making our predictions for the 2022 tournament. Gets underway on Sunday, where Barbora Krejcikova is the defending champion, having won in the 2021 final, beating Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. Kieran, Iga Swiatek, the number one seed, the heavy favorite. I think possibly as heavy favorite as we've seen going into a WTA slam for a while. But how much are you looking forward to this tournament?
Yeah, as you said, Swiatek is the number one seed, and deservedly so based on current form. She has really swept aside the competition in recent weeks. I mean, for most of the year, to be honest. And clay is a fantastic surface for her. It's where she's got her only slam title so far, although she'll definitely be adding to it at some point soon. I'm not saying definitely this time, but definitely some point soon. But then I think there's some unknown quantities in there, and I think Barbora Krejcikova, the defending champion, is one of them, because we haven't seen her in the clay court season. We haven't seen much of her this year, but we know what a fantastic pedigree she has on this surface. And there's other players in there. Swiatek only being a one-time slam champion, she doesn't, I've said before, she doesn't have that aura that Serena Williams or, that the big three on the men's tour have. And that means that we might even see a surprise in this tournament for me, although without spoiling anything, I probably haven't predicted that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But just on that topic of surprises, before we get into it, there is an interesting stat that 3 of the last 5 women's singles events at the French Open have been won by an unseeded player. Jelena Ostapenko in 2017, Iga Swiatek in 2020, and Krejcikova last year was unseeded. So, and also in 2019, it was an unseeded runner-up in Marketa Vondrousova. So there has been a recent history of this tournament of unseeded players going on to win it or reach the final, and so it's definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, as you say, an overwhelming favorite. But we'll come on to that and start with the top quarter, which does contain Iga Swiatek. Yeah, definitely touching on that 2020 run when she did win it outside of the seeded positions, but it's a very different situation here, being the world number one on a 28-match winning streak, starting in that top quarter with Swiatek. How do you see that one playing out, and who do you see coming through to a quarterfinal?
Well, I think you can't look beyond Swiatek, but purely on the form that she's in. I mean, Sharenko in the first round is actually a weirdly dangerous one. She's a player with some pedigree, came through qualifying, but you still don't see her springing a surprise. I think Simona Halep being in this section is really interesting. That could provide a great fourth round, but she'd have to come through Jelena Ostapenko. There is, in fact, I think 3 French Open champions in this section of the draw, so it's a weirdly stacked section. But Halep's had a couple of good wins in the clay court season, and then Ostapenko, she hasn't actually won a singles match on clay this year, I believe. So despite being a former French Open champion, she doesn't come into it with kind of that much hype, or she's not towards the favourites according to the bookies, I don't believe. So I might even have Halep to come up against Swiatek in the fourth round, which should be an intriguing fourth round, but you can't look beyond Swiatek winning that at the moment.
No, I'm in total agreement with this section. Yeah, I do think, as you say, Sharenko has had some good results in the past, and then you've got Yastremska potentially in the second round is a dangerous player who has dropped down the rankings a bit after a ban. But yeah, I think I can't see too many issues there for Swiatek to come through. I mean, Mila Samsonova, the seed in there is a dangerous player. I mean, did take Swiatek to 3 sets in Stuttgart, which, I mean, one of the few players probably to do that during the fantastic run she's been on. But yeah, I would still back Swiatek there. And I agree. I think Halep's probably the most likely fourth round opponent. I think she would get through there. Saw a good run from her in Madrid. Has looked somewhere near back to her best, if not quite there yet. Maybe in a title winning form. And as you mentioned, Ostapenko, I think winless since February. Always dangerous, a former champion, but I'm not expecting too much from her here, given the form. But yeah, as we know, Ostapenko, form doesn't always write her off, because I mean she could still be a threat. But yeah, I think Swiatek to beat Halep as she did in 2020 when she went on to win the title. So moving into the second section, and the player who would face Swiatek in that quarterfinal, got Karolina Pliskova, the highest seed here, the number 8 seed, also Jessica Pegula, the 11th seed. How do you see that one going?
Yeah, well, I think between those two, to be honest. But that said, Tamara Zidansek, all the way into the semi-final last year, quite a surprise semi-finalist, but once again, we haven't seen much of her this year. I mean, it's a weird section. There's a couple of sections like this where there's a lot of young players, and a lot of wild cards, a lot of qualifiers. It feels like there's more wild cards in the women's draw for some reason, although I'm sure that isn't true. But just when I was looking through it, it felt that way. So a lot of unknown quantities again in there, but I do see it being a fourth round between Pegula and Karolina Pliskova, and I'd actually go with Pegula to win that at the moment. She massively leads the head-to-head between those two, although most of those matches in the head-to-head are on hard courts, so that's a consideration that has to be made. But I do think she's in the better form at the moment as well. Had a couple of good runs recently. I don't think Karolina Pliskova is at her best at the moment. So yeah, I'm saying Pegula to me, Swiatek in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, and I also agree with you on this one. I think I've got Pegula to come through there, as you mentioned, just the player in the better form. Yeah, finalist in Madrid, and backed up with a decent round of 16 run in Rome. So, and also a great start of the year at the Australian Open. We have seen some really consistent results from her, and now transitioning that onto the clay. I think she's, the player in that section probably best prepared to take advantage of it, because I think Pliskova, as you mentioned, not being in the greatest of form, had been coming back off an injury after missing the start of the season. We did see a better run from her this week, but yeah, not a lot in Madrid and Rome. So I would back Pegula to come through there. I mean, there's definitely some interesting players there. I think in Pegula's section, in two Ukrainians, Kalinina and Kostyuk, definitely dangerous on clay. Kostyuk had a good run at the French Open last year. Kalinina in Madrid just a couple of weeks ago. And also Zidansek, who reached the semi-finals last year, the Slovenian, but he's seeded now. But I think, Pegula I would back to get through. And Pliskova, probably to meet her in the fourth round. Alexandrova could be a factor there. He's had some decent results on the clay, but yeah, Pegula to come through and meet Swiatek. So moving into the third section, in the second quarter, we've got Paula Badosa, the top seed in this section, the number 3 seed. Also Elena Rybakina, the 16th seed, who had a good run last year. Who do you see coming through this one?
I think Badosa will be quite happy with the way it's fallen. Like I say, another section where it seems like we've got a lot of wild cards and qualifiers. I think, there is potential banana skins in there. She hasn't had the best clay court season as well. Veronika Kudermetova, a possible third round opponent, would be a tough match, but Badosa did beat her in Madrid, so one of the few wins she's had in the clay court season, and that should stand her in good stead for that match. I think I'd probably back Rybakina on the other side of this section, despite Madison Keys being there, and some relatively awkward players as well, such as Carol Garcia, who we know's been a fantastic player in the past, but maybe beyond the best years now. Golubic as well. So some possible banana skins in there, but I'm having a Badosa Rybakina fourth round, and I do think that despite Badosa's form in the clay court season, you've got to look at last year as well, where I think Roland Garros, the French Open, is still her best performance in a slam, reaching the quarterfinals last year. So I think she'll be keen to shake off the cobwebs of the clay court season and have another strong run at Roland Garros, and I do see her coming through it.
Yeah, I agree. I also see her coming through it, and I would go for the same last 16 matchup in Badosa against Rybakina. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think Badosa's run at the quarterfinals last year definitely shows what she is capable of at this tournament, and as you mentioned, hasn't had the greatest clay court season, although the semi-finals in Stuttgart wasn't too bad. And I feel like even though the early exits in Madrid and Rome didn't look great, they were against Halep and Kasatkina, so I don't feel they were really bad losses. And as you mentioned, I do think it's quite a good draw early on for it to come through. I mean, there's Kaya Juvan potentially in the second round. He's through to a final this week. He's in form, but yeah, I'd still have Badosa get through that, and Kudermetova, he's a dangerous player on clay as well. But yeah, I think she'll be okay there. I'm back here to find something closer to her best at this tournament, and Rybakina, who I think reached the quarterfinals last year, I think is the most likely opponent for her. Madison Keys is in there, who's definitely dangerous. It can be on clay as well, but yeah, I'd back Rybakina, who hasn't had a bad clay court season, but Badosa to come through. And so moving on to the next section of this quarter, and the player who would meet Badosa in the quarterfinals, you've got Aryna Sabalenka, the number 7 seed, and Danielle Collins, the 9th seed. So how do you see this one going, Kieran?
I mean, Danielle Collins is a bad clay court player by any measure of the imagination, but I don't really see her coming through it despite being one of the higher seeds in this section. She has got Daria Kasatkina in her side of this section as well, who we know is very dangerous on this surface. So I probably see Kasatkina actually coming into the 4th round above Danielle Collins and meeting. I think she meets Aryna Sabalenka. I don't really see Camila Giorgi as much of a banana skin on this surface, and other ones as well. I think Yulia Putintseva is probably the main banana skin in that section. She's had a couple of good wins during this clay court season, some pedigree on the surface, but I'd back Sabalenka to be both of those players I've mentioned. There is some other players in there that could spring a surprise, but I see Sabalenka coming into the 4th round and beating Daria Kasatkina in that 4th round to come through and play against Badosa in the quarterfinals, which should be an interesting match if it does transpire.
Yeah, that definitely would be an interesting one. But we've got a different opinion on this one. I think for the first time, I've got Daria Kasatkina come through and reach the quarterfinals, which she did do in 2018 at Roland Garros. I think, yeah, the form we've seen from her in Rome, and also generally this year has been good signs from her. But definitely Rome was, I think, we saw some of the best tennis for quite some time, and having match point in that semi-final, she was close there to get into a WTA 1000 final. So I do think she's capable of having a strong run here on the clay, and I do think Collins is one of the higher seeds who's probably more beatable, particularly at Roland Garros, even though she has, I think, made the quarterfinals before. I do think Kasatkina I would back if both those players are at their best on this surface. And Sabalenka, had a good semi-final run in Rome, also made the semis in Stuttgart with an early exit in Madrid in between, but it hasn't made it past the 3rd round at this tournament yet in, I think, 4 appearances. So it hasn't been easy for Roland Garros. We have seen a few early exits in a Grand Slam. I think you're right to point out Yulia Putintseva as a dangerous player in there who's made the quarterfinals here twice, did beat Sabalenka in their only previous meeting, which wasn't a slam, but at the US Open. So I think that will be a tough match for Sabalenka if that does happen in the 3rd round. But yeah, I'd maybe still have Sabalenka to come through, but Kasatkina to spring a bit of an upset in the last 16. So moving into the bottom half, where you've got Ons Jabeur here, the number 6 seed in this top section of the 3rd quarter. Also Emma Raducanu, the 12th seed. Jabeur, one of the informed players after fantastic runs in Madrid and Rome. What do you make of this quarter, Kieran? It's quite an interesting one, the top section of this quarter.
Yeah, this is the British section, this, isn't it? Harry Dart in there as well, and Heather Watson. So hopefully one of them springs a strong run at least. I think Raducanu's got a really, really dangerous 1st round there, actually. Linda Noskova is a junior French Open champion, I believe. So, and Raducanu herself is an example of how dangerous a qualifier can be. But I do think Raducanu, she's shown some good stuff on the clay this year. She's had time to rest up from her injury issues, so hopefully they don't affect her too much. And I do still back her with that experience she's now got on the main tour and winning a slam. I do back her to come through into the third round at least. But I think Angelique Kerber is a possible stumbling block. Clay isn't actually Kerber's best surface, but she's not bad on it either. Had a couple of decent wins this year, so I mean, I don't know, to be honest, but I'd probably back Kerber to beat Raducanu at the moment and move into the fourth round. But I think whoever comes through into the fourth round on the bottom half of this section meets a really tough opponent in Ons Jabeur. It's not actually a cakewalk for Jabeur either. I mean, Petra Kvitova, once again, she's a Grand Slam champion. She's reached the semi-finals of Roland Garros twice, and she leads a head-to-head against Ons Jabeur as well. So everything's in her favour except recent form, and Jabeur with a title and a final in WTA 1000s on clay this year. I think you've got to back her, and I think you've got to back her to make it into the quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think you do, and I have as well. I've also got Jabeur coming through the quarterfinals. I do think it's a decent draw for her early on with Lynette is a good player, definitely. Even Trevisan, who's had a good run at the French Open before, is in a final this week. But yeah, I just think that what we've seen from Jabeur in Madrid and Rome was a really big breakthrough. So I'd back her to get through the fourth round. There's Daria Saville in there. He's had a good revival as well. Kvitova, as you mentioned, can definitely, she's a fantastic player. She's made the semi-finals of the French Open before. But I mean, seeing Kvitova as the 32 seed is really surprising. I think it shows the lack of form we've seen from her really this year. And for some time, I mean, a player of her caliber to be almost unseeded is surprising. So I think Jabeur will get through that into the last 16, and I think it's tough to call who would play her there. I mean, as you mentioned, Raducanu has had an encouraging clay court season, had a bit of an injury in Rome, so hopefully she is going to be 100% fit here. And as you mentioned, could be a tricky one first up. I think also Sasnovich in the second round might not be easy. She can be a dangerous opponent. Kerber, not on a favorite surface, definitely, but a bit of form. She's got a few wins, I think, this week, and so I would maybe go with Kerber to get through the fourth round there, but Jabeur to get through the quarterfinals. Moving on to who would face Jabeur in that third quarterfinal. Moving to the sixth section, where you've got Maria Sakkari as the highest seed, the number 4 seed. Also, you've got Belinda Bencic, the 14th seed, but you've also got Amanda Anisimova, Leylah Fernandez, Bianca Andreescu, Naomi Osaka. I mean, this is such an interesting section. What did you make of this one, and who did you pick to come through that?
It's quite stacked in a weird way. I don't think, at least, there's a French Open champion at senior level in there, but a lot of very, very good players. Belinda Bencic, decent on clay, but not amazing. Her only main tour title, actually, on clay is Charleston this year on the green clay. Andreescu came into a little bit of form this clay court season. Leylah Fernandez is a junior French Open champion, I believe. Anisimova, decent clay court season, but even if it's not Naomi Osaka's best surface, you don't want to see that name in the first round. Anisimova has beaten her before, of course, but that's not a first round opponent you want. Donna Vekic coming in as a qualifier is a really strange one to see, considering her pedigree, but she has had time off the tour recently. But if she comes back into form, she's a dangerous player for anyone. But navigating this really tough section, I've just had to give it to Maria Sakkari. Obviously, there's questions around Sakkari and mental toughness maybe in matches. I think the recent loss to Ons Jabeur was an example of that, where she collapsed in the match, and especially in the slams. She has made some strides forward recently, but she still seems to have a little bit of a problem with the slams. But I do think she is probably the best player in that section, and I do think she'll come through maybe against Andreescu in the fourth round. Andreescu's got a really tough run to the fourth round. Leylah Fernandez a possible third round, but I'll give it to her just based on getting a couple of decent wins, decent runs coming back from injury.
Yeah. This is a really, really interesting one. Really difficult to call. As you say, so many quality players in there, and also just big name players who have been ranked much higher, as you mentioned, like Vekic, Mukova, who's been coming off an injury, but I think's made the quarterfinals before and has had some really good results in Grand Slams. Mladenovic, who has been a great player in the past, Petra Martic. So yeah, so many names in there, but I've gone with Amanda Anisimova to make it through the quarterfinals. As you mentioned, I mean, that first round against Osaka, it's not one you want. It's definitely not one you want to see, but did win that match between them at the Australian Open, which was a great match, and I feel on clay that balances it further in Anisimova's favour, given what we've seen, the results she's had, not just this year in the semis in Charleston, then back-to-back quarterfinals in Madrid and Rome, which was really impressive, but also making the semis at the French Open in 2019. I still think Osaka has shown signs of improvement on clay, but isn't really at the level yet where I'd expect her to make a big win, a big runner. But yeah, she's still dangerous as an early round opponent. And Sakkari in the third round would be there for Anisimova. It's a tough one to call, definitely, but I'm just going to back Anisimova with, as I say, the great clay court season she's had, and the year in general has been really impressive, going back to the Australian Open. And I'd have it a meet in the fourth round. I think I would agree with you on Bianca Andreescu, who we've seen have a really good return at the tour on clay. Solid results in Stuttgart, in Madrid, and then in Rome, making the quarterfinals, where she played impressively against Iga Swiatek. Definitely some really good signs for Andreescu, and I think she could upset Bencic in the second round. Whether that'll be a massive upset, maybe not. But Bencic on clay, I think, as you mentioned, it's probably a worse surface. And Fernandez, I think, is definitely capable on clay. Did win the Junior French Open, but at best results so far have probably come on hard courts, I think, at senior level. So I would go with Andreescu actually to get through there and meet Anisimova, but it would just give Anisimova the edge. So moving into the final quarter, the top section of this court, where we've got Anett Kontaveit as the number 5 seed, also Gabina Muguruza there, the number 10 seed, but I would say it's another quite it's another one with some strong players and some dangerous unseeded players. How do you see this one going?
I think I may have gone with quite a weird one here, and I've got Gauff to come through it and move into the quarters. Now, I believe Coco Gauff's best Grand Slam result actually is the quarterfinal at the French Open last year, and I'd back her to get there again. I think Gabina Muguruza are horrifically out of form. I'm not even sure she'll make the third round. I think she will, but I'm not certain of it. And I'd probably back Gauff to come through that on current form for possible fourth round opponents. Elise Mertens is obviously a player that has some pedigree, but I don't think we've seen the best of her that often recently. Anett Kontaveit, she's all right on clay. She's not brilliant on clay. It's probably not quite the best surface, and she's got a tough first round against Alja Tomljanovic, who's probably the same thing actually. Some good results on clay, but it's probably not her best surface. But she has been a fairly high-ranked player in the past and has made the later stages of a slam before. So it's a tough one to call again, and I think I will just have Coco Gauff coming into the quarterfinal, having met Anett Kontaveit in the fourth round.
Yeah, I also agree with you on Coco Gauff coming through this one. I think, agree, it is a tough one to call, but I think Gauff has had some really good results, some really solid results on the clay anyway this year. Last 16 in Madrid and Rome, and obviously, as you mentioned, the quarterfinals at Roland Garros last year, which was a great run for her. I think she's definitely capable of coming through this section. As you mentioned, Muguruza really short of wins, particularly on the clay. And I mean, Kaya Kanepi in the first round is what no one wants to see. Just renowned for upsetting top players and seeds in Grand Slams. I think she's had 9 top wins against top 10 opponents in Grand Slams, which I mean is fantastic start. And that includes the Australian Open this year, where she went on and reached the quarterfinals, knocking out Sabalenka, who I think was in the top 10 at the time. Also Halep, who wasn't. So, sorry, it wasn't Halep. It was Muguruza. But yeah, I think that's a tough one for Muguruza to come through. I'd say it's almost a 50-50 match on Muguruza's form against Kanepi. So I've got Gauff to get through the fourth round, where she'd possibly play Kanepi on the way. But to get there, and I'll go with Kontaveit, possibly Amir in the fourth round, as you mentioned. Clay, she's definitely not as good on clay as on hard courts, but has made the last 16 here before. But yeah, right to mention Tomljanovic is a tough draw. He's also made the same stage of the French Open in the past. Mertens has had some good runs here before, but like you say, short of wins and had been coming back from an injury. So I think I'm going to go with Goff to beat Kontaveit in the fourth round to get through the quarterfinals. And moving on to the final section, who would meet Goff in that quarterfinal. We've got the defending champion and the number 2 seed, Barbora Krejcikova, at the bottom here. Also, Victoria Azarenka, the 15th seed in there. That is another interesting one. Tough to call, given Krejcikova, the unknown of Krejcikova, a bit like Medvedev in the men's draw, who's also the number 2 seed. A similar section of that, but how do you see this one going?
I have given it to the 2021 champion, the defending champion, Barbora Krejcikova, whose name I weirdly struggled to pronounce. I struggle to spell it as well. I don't know where that C comes. It comes after the J before the K, with an I in between. It's an awkward name for me to spell and to read, but she's a fantastic player. Her pedigree on clay speaks for itself. You know, she's got a good mix of weapons. Being an established doubles player as well, she's got decent hands at the net if she wants to switch it up, and hits with decent variety. So really decent mix of weapons for the clay. So I would, despite the cloud hanging over of the fact we haven't seen much of her this year and we haven't seen her yet in the clay court season, I'd still have her to come through, especially as the defending champion. Like, it's going to be a motivator because there's a chance of dropping a lot of points here if she doesn't have a great run. I think I probably would have her coming through as a ranker maybe, although Jill Teichmann's shown some really promising signs in the 2 1000 events on clay. As a ranker, also a couple of decent runs, but not fantastic runs. But I'll just give her the fourth round based on maybe that extra little bit of experience in the big tournaments. I think she's got a positive record, although it might only be one, I know, against Teichmann as well. So I'll say Krejcikova to be Azarenka in the fourth round to come into the quarterfinal against Coco Gauff. So
yeah. I'm just going to quickly correct myself on what I slightly butchered on Kanepi previously. She did beat Sabalenka get the Australian Open, but not Muguruza as well. It was also Angelique Kerber, so just wanted to say she didn't actually beat Muguruza. But yeah, anyway, we've got that one cleared up. And yeah, for this one, I've actually gone with maybe another slight surprise. I've gone with Jill Teichmann to get through to meet Coco Gauff. And yeah, it is a really difficult one to call. As you mentioned, it's Krejcikova, just a bit of an unknown. Definitely, if we could see her, somewhere close to her best, I would probably be backing her to come through. We saw how good she was last year at all the slams, really. But yeah, just not playing since February. It is a bit of a concern. Although I don't think she'd fall in the first couple of rounds. I would probably back her to get through to the fourth round. I mean, you've got Sorana Costea in there. He's definitely dangerous. Camilo Osorio Serrano as well. He's had some good results on clay and hard courts, but yeah, I'd have Krejcikova to get through the fourth round. But probably I'm going to go with Teichmann, as you mentioned, the fantastic form in reaching the semifinals in Madrid, quarterfinals in Rome, where she was stopped by an injury, could have potentially gone even further there. So yeah, I've been really impressed by Teichmann's game. I think well suited to the clay and not a bad draw, certainly for the first couple of rounds. But then, as you mentioned, Azarenka, not to be overlooked as possible third round opponent there, but not most comfortable on the clay. I definitely think that's a win Teichmann could achieve, and then possibly beat Krejcikova in the fourth round to get through the quarterfinals. So we'll move on to the quarterfinals, back to the top where we've both gone with an Iga Swiatek against Jessica Pegula matchup. How do you see that one going? I mean, I think I know the answer, but maybe you'll surprise me.
I can only see this one going one way, to be honest. Iga Swiatek beating Jessica Pegula, because I mean, it's everything really, isn't it? It's the quality on clay courts themselves. I mean, Pegula's not a bad player on clay, but we're talking Swiatek on probably her best surface. There's maybe room for debate about that at the moment, but probably her best surface. The player in the most form, the player who's now the world number one, heavy favourite, and also I think the head-to-head's in Swiatek's favour as well, and I think she has beaten her this year, although I think that may have been on a hard court. So yeah, I'll give that one to Iga Swiatek.
Yeah, I totally agree with this one. I couldn't see it going the other way, really. I mean, Pegula, as we mentioned, has had some good results on the clay, some solid runs in Grand Slams, but hasn't maybe had that really big win against, well, she did, I think, beat Sakkari at the Australian Open. But yeah, I think it would be a big ask to beat Swiatek on clay. I just think she is, yeah, as you mentioned, interesting. What's the best service, clay and hard courts? I'd still probably say clay for Swiatek, but is a tough one after the run she's been on. And yeah, I'll just back it for that winning run to continue one match further against Pegula. So moving on to who would play Swiatek in that potential semi-final. I think you went with the Paula Badosa, Aryna Sabalenka matchup. Who do you see coming out on top there?
I've actually backed Aryna Sabalenka into the semi-final. I know she hasn't had the greatest year, but I do think she's improved recently. I think the serve, it has been a big cloud over her this year, but I don't think it's been as big of a problem recently as well. She made it into the final of Stuttgart. She made it to the semi-final of Rome, and just being in a better form than Badosa recently. I see her coming into the semi-final to face Iga Swiatek, who probably spoiling my next prediction, has beaten her twice during this clay court swing, so probably won't be happy to see her again.
No, I agree. I don't think she would. And I think, yeah, Sabalenka is definitely a dangerous player. I haven't gone with her to reach the quarterfinals, which could be, it's always tough to predict with Sabalenka, but I've gone with the Badosa Kazakhina matchup, and I've gone with Paula Badosa to win that and have what would be a best Grand Slam result go one better than a quarterfinal last year at Roland Garros. Kazakhina did beat Badosa just in Rome recently, but I do think I would just back Badosa here. I do think she's almost due a good run, and as I mentioned, I don't feel the losses in Madrid and Rome, they're obviously the quality players in Kazakhina and Halep. I'll just have her to get a bit of revenge in this one and make that semi-final with Swiatek, which would be a really interesting match. But I think both players very capable on clay, Badosa and Kazakhina, would just maybe give Badosa the slight edge in terms of weight of shot, but maybe the serve. But yeah, it's a tough one, but I'll go the Badosa Swiatek semi-final. So moving on to the third quarterfinal, I think you've gone for a Ons Jabeur Maria Sakkari matchup. Who do you see coming through there?
I think this is quite a difficult one to call, especially considering how competitive that match was in Rome recently. Aside from Sakkari's collapse, and I might actually have Maria Sakkari to get revenge. I do think she has got great weapons, and I do think she will be keen to put some disappointments aside her, especially at the slam level. I mean, Jabeur as well. Her form this clay court season speaks for itself. Her form for the majority of the last couple of years also speaks for itself. So really, it's probably quite an unfair pick, and it's on nothing other than I just feel that Maria Sakkari has some untapped potential as a possible slam winner, and I don't think she's going to get it quite yet, but I do see her making another good step in a slam at the French Open. Yeah,
no, I totally agree with you on Sakkari having the ability to beat a slam winner. And I didn't have it quite coming through the quarters here, but that was probably just more to do with Anisimova and the fantastic form she was in. But yeah, I've got Anisimova to meet Jabeur in that quarterfinal, which I think would be another really interesting one. Jabeur has made the quarterfinals at Roland Garros before Anisimova the semi-finals. So I mean, they've been at this stage of the tournament before, and I would go with Jabeur just to edge that one and make a first Grand Slam semi-final, which would be a big breakthrough. I just think, yeah, that the confidence she'll have from winning the first WTA 1000 title in Madrid on the clay, then backing it up the the very next week reaching the final, where she showed some real character to come through a couple of matches, which she looked down and out in, as you mentioned, against Sakari and also against Kazatkina. And I'm just going to go there to continue that momentum here. Yeah, a game really well suited to the clay. Anisimova, obviously, as well, with the power she's got. Jabeur with a bit more variety. It would be a really interesting match to watch. I'll just give Jabeur the nod there through the semi-finals. And so moving on into the final quarter-final, we've both got Coco Gauff, but I believe you've got Gauff to face Barbora Krejcikova. Who do you see coming through that one to meet Maria Sakkari, as you predicted?
Well, the way I see it, I see Barbora Krejcikova's run very much mirroring her 2021 run up to this point. I think she met Coco Gauff in the quarterfinals there and beat her on the way to the title. And I think that set up a semi-final with Maria Sakkari, who obviously already predicted to go through to the semi-final. So yeah, it's strange one that it could fall the exact same way up to that point as last year. But I will have Krejcikova to come through just because the evidence previously at Roland Garros had her beating Coco Gauff, and I do think if she's anywhere near her best year, obviously, like I say, not playing at all on clay this year does put a cloud over that. But if she does find anywhere near her best tennis, I do see her coming through through her draw and all the way into the semi-final at least.
Yeah, I've also got Coco Gauff to go out in the quarterfinals, but I've got Jill Teichmann to be the player to beat, which would be a bit of a surprise run. But given just the clay court season she's had, we've talked about, I do think she's capable of getting at this stage at clay court events. Obviously, being still best of three on the women's side at slams, the same as the WTA 1000 level. There's not a change of format there. I do think she's capable, and I'll just give her the slight edge over Gauff, who she is a few years older than. I mean, in terms of experience, we know Gauff has already got a fantastic amount of experience for a 19-year-old. But I would have it maybe just to fall in the quarterfinals again this year, which wouldn't at all be a bad run for her. But yeah, I do think Teichmann capable of a deep run here, and I'll go for a third big clay court event of the season to get through the semis. So we'll move on to those two semi-finals. You've gone for an Iga Swiatek Arena Sabalenka matchup. As you mentioned, they've already played it a couple of times on clay this year, but do you see it going the same way?
Yeah, definitely. I think Iga Swiatek probably does just have Arena Sabalenka's number at the moment, especially on clay courts. Sabalenka hasn't won any match between the two since the very first time they met, which was fairly recently in the 2021 WTA finals. Have played 3 times this year: Doha, Stuttgart, Rome, and Swiatek's won in straight sets every time. So I think to call anything other than a Swiatek victory in that match would be quite the call.
Yeah, I definitely would. I would agree with you if I'd had Sabalenka there, but I've got Paula Badosa, but I've got the same outcome with Iga Swiatek getting through to a second French Open final. I think this would be a really interesting one as well. I mean, for Badosa, I just think to get this big run at a slam would be a great result for her. Okay, she's made the quarters last year, but to go all the way to the semis, I think she's maybe capable of testing Swiatek at her very best. But yeah, I've still got to go with Swiatek to win that. I mean, the 28 match winning streak she's carrying in, I really think it would take some performance to stop her from Badosa. And although I've got to come through to the semis and find, obviously to do that, she's going to have to find something close to her best tennis, but I think she would need maybe one of her best ever, probably her best ever performance to win that. And yeah, I'm just going to go with Swiatek, what she's done at this tournament before, and also it would be her third Grand Slam semi-final after having also reached that stage at the Australian Open this year. I just think that would give her, I can't look past her there. So moving on to the second semi-final and who you'd have to meet Swiatek in the final, you've gone for Maria Sakkari, Barbora Krejcikova matchup. Who do you see? As you mentioned, a repeat of last year's semi-final. Do you see it going the other way this time or not?
I was actually going the other way, and Maria Sakkari to make her first slam final, to just go that one step further than last year. But then I looked at the head-to-head, which there's only 3 matches in there, and one of them's as far back as 2014, and realised that Krejcikova completely has a number so far with a 3-0 record. I think part of that may be just because Sakkari, with the main thing being hitting from the baseline, hitting relatively powerful, but sometimes maybe coming unstuck with a few errors. I think Krejcikova really does have the game to maybe neutralise that, come to the net a bit more, make her try and kick through her, insert that doubt into Sakkari from the baseline, also to maybe mix it up with some drop shots and stuff like that. I think that's why I see Krejcikova as really having Sakkari's number. Last year's semi-final was really competitive. Actually, it went to 3 very long sets, but Krejcikova still came through. So I'm having Krejcikova to get all the way into the final and trying to defend Roland Garros, which is also quite a call considering how little tennis she's played recently.
Absolutely, that would be interesting, and it would be interesting to see the defending champion and the number 2 seed take on the top seed. He's in such fantastic form. But I've gone with something a bit different with Ons Jabeur to beat Jill Teichmann in my semi-final, which would be a big run for Jabeur, again through to her first Grand Slam final. And as I've mentioned, I just do think she's in the form to do it. I think the breakthrough she's had in big events could propel her to a final here, and will be a repeat of the Rome final. I would give her the edge over Teichmann. Neither of them would have been at this stage of a slam before if they do meet there, so I think it could be an interesting one, a nervy one possibly. But I'll go with Jabeur, as I mentioned before, that not only the power, the variety, just the game really, really well suited to the clay, but it could be an interesting one. But I do think Jabeur's potentially ready to get through to the final of the slam and meet Swiatek. So moving on to the finals, we've both picked. You've gone for that Swiatek Krejcikova matchup. Could be a really interesting one, as we've talked about. How do you see it going?
I see Swiatek winning. Swiatek's just in irrepressible form at the moment. She's also got Swiatek's number. This is where Krejcikova's run from the quarterfinal to the semi-final to the final stopped mirroring last year, because it wasn't Swiatek that she met in last year's final, and I think that's where fortune may end for a different opponent, and an opponent that's beaten her twice, both times in 2021, once on the hard courts in Miami, the next time on the clay courts in Rome. So I think Swiatek, just the form that she's in at the moment, as I've mentioned, I see her getting a second Grand Slam title, her second Slam title at the French Open, and maybe the second of many. I think it won't be long after she follows up and gets a second Slam title, possibly on the clay at the French Open, which she starts to win more senior Slam titles on the different surfaces as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree that that's going to happen. I've got the same outcome with Iga Swiatek to beat Ons Jabeur in the final. I do think Swiatek's going to get a second Slam and a second Roland Garros in what would be a rematch of the Rome final, which it was one-sided. But I think there's the potential for it to be closer this time. I think Jabeur was pretty fatigued in that match after exploits in Madrid and Rome, where she played obviously the maximum number of matches in 2 weeks. It was a tough one. She might be potentially could be a bit fresher here with it being a slam, the rest days in between, depending on a run, of course. So I'll be really interested to see a rematch of that. The head-to-head is 2-2, so it could, with Jabeur winning 2 of the last 3. Okay, neither of those were on clay though. There's one at Wimbledon last year and one on hard courts in Cincinnati. But the Wimbledon win was a Grand Slam win. It could one of the few players really you'd say to beat Swiatek in slams. It was in around 16. But I can't look past Swiatek. I mean, we've talked about it before. The record she has in finals is unbelievable. Not losing more than 4 games in a set since losing her first final. She's won those next 8 with that record. So, and particularly in the big ones, just pretty ruthless victories. And I can't look past her here to win to win a second slam and to continue that winning streak to what I believe 35 it would be if she won the final. So that'll be getting into the territory where she's challenging some of the longest winning streaks potentially. So yeah, it'd be very interesting, but we'll see what happens on the women's side. We've both gone for an Iga Swiatek win. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we'll be back with another podcast, certainly to review the French Open, if not anything before then. So thanks again for listening.